Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are two retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon and this guy right here, my partner, Ed Wallace. Hey, we want to just start off the show by saying thank you to our Patreon supporters, the channel members, the subscribers, the folks who leave positive engagement down below in the comment section, our live chatters, the replay viewers, and we can't forget about the mod squad, all of our moderators who keep this chat classy. Ed and I really appreciate you. We give thanks and praise. We have a great guest tonight. But before we get into it, Ed, how you doing? 2 nights in a row with me and Ed Wallace.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing good. Very busy today, dodging raindrops and thunder and lightning and getting electric work done here at my house.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, our guest, right before we put her on, I want to just tell everybody, she had a electrical fire, because maybe due to these storms and so forth, she lost her internet connection. So she's going to be joining us live, Tracy Walder, by her cell phone. So please be kind to her. It's not usually the way she does it. She comes on with her computer and she's usually hooked right into the internet. But tonight we are going to talk about Rex Heuermann, the Gilgo Beach alleged serial killer. He's in custody, innocent until proven guilty. But we're going to talk about what the FBI's role is, because as we know, our special guest, Tracy Walder, is not only the News Nation's national security contributor as of March of this year, she's also a former CIA officer and a retired FBI special agent. So she's got a lot of experience as far as the FBI goes, and counter intelligence and surveillance and so forth. But before we get into it, I got a little media I want to play, and then we'll introduce her. But I know, Ed, you're excited about tonight's show. We're going to get into it in a few. Anything jump out at you about today? Anything additional, Ed, before I show this piece?
I know there was a lot of coverage on the news today about different properties that he's involved with. The South Carolina property looks like one big junkyard. They're talking about a timeshare that he has in Vegas. And it's like, I doubt he has anything there, because you don't really own the timeshare. You don't really furnish it yourself. That's all taken care of by the timeshare company, and other people stay there. So yeah. I really doubt that there's anything there of any significance associated with this. But, they do have to look at unsolved cases in areas where he had residences or properties and see what's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they have to dot their I's and cross their T's here. Everything has to be checked and double checked. In a case of this magnitude, on the scale that it's on, it's in the public eye now. But here on Long Island, I'm a born and raised Long Islander. This case is arguably the most severe serial killer case that we've had. We had Joel Rifkin, which was in the 90s, and some argue that this is a copycat of Joel Rifkin, and we went into that the other day. But let me just play this piece, and I want to bring Tracy on because she's waiting to come on in with us. This sets up what we've been discussing here, and it also tells you a little bit about the history of this case, because a lot of people have questions about what Suffolk County Police Department, what they did and what they didn't do. And this is a kind of an old piece, but it really goes over some of the things that didn't happen and that happened. Fast forward to today.
Today in Gilgo Beach, a guardrail blocks cars from driving next to the thicket of Virginia weepers and bittersweet brush on the north side of Ocean Parkway. Some 12 years ago, though, Suffolk County Police believe a killer drove his vehicle onto the parkway's then open grass shoulder. Probably in the dark of night, he got out and quickly dumped the body of a petite sex worker he had strangled and wrapped in a burlap bag. He dumped her body amidst the brush, poison ivy, and ticks in an area so unseeable and uninviting that no one noticed 9 other bodies and body parts dumped in the area from 1996 to 2010. But it's not only the thick brush here at Gilgo Beach that's hampered the search for the Long Island serial killer or killers. It's also, many believe, past mistakes made by the Suffolk County Police Department. In particular, keeping the FBI out of the investigation for years.
You know, frankly, the case was mismanaged in a number of respects. And one of them undoubtedly relates to blocking the FBI from assisting.
In an interview with Newsday crime reporter Michael O'Keefe, Tim Sini said that in 2015, when he became Suffolk County Police Commissioner, the previous chief of police there, James Burke, had removed the FBI from the investigation of the Gilgo Beach serial killing. Later, an FBI investigation led to the conviction of Chief Burke for beating a robbery suspect in a police station and then covering it up. As police commissioner, Sini found official written evidence of his Suffolk County predecessors blocking FBI involvement.
It was this memorandum from a police detective basically saying, we arranged to deliver the homicide file to the FBI's behavioral science unit to assist in the investigation. And in the last moment, the DA's office under Tom Spoda objected to us sharing that information, and therefore we were forbidden to by the police department, and we did not.
Security consultant and attorney
So that's what I wanted to set up, Ed. Discouraging, to say the least, that the FBI was ready, willing, and able to assist Suffolk County, arguably a small police department, but not a teeny police department. And there was notifications and indications in the case file that it was blocked. So troubling, to say the least.
Yeah, that's it was important that you brought that up because in the beginning, the press conference the other day, what did our former chief of detectives say? We put our egos and left them out the door.
Right.
And unfortunately, it appears that they didn't do that the first time around.
And that's very problematic. But fast forward to today, February 1st, 2022, Chief Harrison took the helm. They formed this unified task force, and the FBI was included in it. Fast forward to 16 months later, after they identified the defendant here, we got a collar. So without further ado, I want to introduce Tracy Walder. She is a News Nation national security contributor as of March of 2023. Great addition to that staff. She's a former CIA officer, retired FBI special agent. I'm thankful and I'm honored to have Tracy here with us. Good evening.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Tracy, we're used to seeing you on the news, right? On News Nation. So when we get you into a YouTube live like this, it's almost like we're welcoming a fellow brother or sister into our live stream. Fellow law enforcement, we want to thank you for your service during the course of time. I read a lot of your literature and your books and things that you've put out there, some of your interviews. You've had quite a career between the two agencies, and you've done quite a bit. I wanted to pick your brain apart a little bit tonight, Ed and I, about the FBI's role in this Gilgo Beach murder case. You just heard the piece that we played there, Tracy. They talked about the former executives in Suffolk County blocking the FBI's involvement. And I just want to see if you can expand a little bit on that and, what the FBI's role is in the positive arrest of Rex Heuermann.
Well, sure. First of all, thank you to you and Ed, both of you, for your service. And I do want to apologize again to your audience. I am always on my internet, but unfortunately there was a house fire diagonal from me and it melted the lines. And so they have to replace them. And I do apologize for any poor quality. In my opinion, and you touched on it before, ego is the enemy of law enforcement, and ego gets people killed, and ego, it's what keeps cases, in my opinion, from remaining unsolved. I mean, we've seen this also, I hate to use this as a comparison, but it's the truth, in regards to information sharing and September 11th and not wanting to loop in different, law enforcement agencies that may have been able to catch these perpetrators beforehand. And that's really no different than what we're seeing here. FBI, we've talked a lot about part of the way Heuermann was captured is through those boxes of the cast data that the FBI was able to make. The first one around his home, and then the second one around his place of employment. You know, that is a newer technology, but had they been brought on in, say, 2013, 2014, that is something that they would have been able to do and would have been able to contribute to a lot quicker than bringing them onto a task force in 2022. And that's simply because they have more resources, both financially, technologically, and forensically, to complete these investigations in a more expeditious way.
Yes. So Tracy, typically, well, this case is a state and local case, this type of case. Okay. Unless there's some kind of kidnapping and crossing of state lines and things like that. So it would have been either getting the FBI involved would have either involved inviting them in or having the FBI offer their services to the state and locals, and then state and locals accepting that offer. Okay. That's typically how I remember it working, right? A lot of the times,
that's the truth.
Yeah, when I worked with the NYPD and your evidence response teams, your ERT, they would contact us and we ask us for help, and we'd go help them, and whatever the case may be. So I thought it was, and as you said earlier, I thought it was an extremely bad move to not check those egos, because even the basic cell phone data before the CAS system came up, even the basic cell phone data of phone calls going back and forth from the decedent's phone, that information of who she was receiving phone calls from was available back in 2010. Okay, you could have
Right,
then,
and I think.
yeah. No, please.
Sorry. And and I think too, what you were mentioning about that cell phone data, also something I was thinking about as well was, excuse me, they were communicating with burner phones. Yes, and back then burner phones were tough, right? That was a tough thing to get, to be able to track. But if we saw that those were all communicating with burner phones, you could have potentially been able to find a location on those burner phones. And we all know that a lot of places have CCTV and would have potentially had security cameras, and maybe we would have seen some commonalities a lot earlier. But yes, you're absolutely right. And in this case, based on what I've heard, it seems that the FBI was not invited in, but I'm certain that the FBI would have at least offered to help. Obviously, I don't know that for sure. It just seems that would have been the case in this situation.
No, absolutely, including the behavioral science unit when we're talking about potential serial killers, because that's what they live and breathe for. Okay, I mean, I did a lot of training with some of the folks down at the FBI behavioral science unit back in the late 80s, early 90s. Before Silence of the Lambs came out and made it very popular. Okay, but yeah, they were doing great work back. And the NYPD only had one FBI trained behavioral science analyst rather. And then when he retired, we lost that capability. So the only place you could get that would be from the FBI, unless you try to contract some university professor or something like that. And that was a shame that they missed on that. And also now, continuing, so the victim's cell phones have records that are kept by the cell phone companies of their incoming phone calls, text, and also internet searches and database. All of that stuff is captured. So that was available back in 2010, and it just never was worked up by the state and locals that were involved in the investigation, where I believe the feds would have had much more capabilities than local law enforcement agencies to do that.
Right. And I think it's important that we point out here, for our listening audience, for our live chatters, a lot of folks think that just the FBI just shows up and says, oh, we're here. We want to help you guys. It doesn't work that way. It goes through channels. And I just want to just break down and expand a little further on what Ed said, because we used to work with in Fugitive, we worked with U.S. Marshal Service. And a lot of times, even when we talk about the Joint Terrorism Task Force in the NYPD, 26 Federal Plaza was right around the block from 1PP. And what we'd have going on is when a smaller department needs the help of an outside agency like the FBI, it most of the times goes through the governor's office. The police commissioner or whoever is sheriff, whatever the jurisdiction is, they make the request. It just doesn't happen like they pick up the phone and say, hey, FBI, come on over and help me. It goes through channels, and a lot of people don't understand that. So I appreciate both of you guys clarifying that, because we like to educate the audience. Go ahead.
And I think on the other sort of side of that too, on the FBI side, one of the things that we always try to be so conscientious about was not interfering where we weren't necessarily welcome. We don't want to come in there and give the perception that we are here to be the saviors, right? And take all of the credit for this investigation. That is a relationship that we want to foster with state and local law enforcement. And so the FBI doesn't sort of just come in there. And I think that's another thing we see in pop culture. It's a great point of the FBI just coming in there, taking charge and, taking credit for the entire investigation. And that really actually doesn't happen a lot. The FBI is very conscientious about when it gets involved, how it gets involved, and the way in which they ask to get involved. So I think that's really critical as well.
Yeah. You mean it doesn't happen like Die Hard when 2 FBI agents show up and take over a hostage negotiation? What? It does. I'm
all the
blown
time.
away.
It happens exactly like that.
I have another piece of media I want to play for the audience. This is for our audience, to give them a bit of an overview, because this goes from it's 3 minutes, but I think it's worth a play because it goes from the beginning to where we are today. And there's some good information in here for folks who are maybe following this from outside the country, or who maybe just don't have access to, local media. So this is coming from News 12, which is a Long Island news agency, Long Island news outlet. I don't know what's happening here, but Tracy, I don't know. Did you jinx us with our internet? Because I can't.
It's not my fault.
I didn't do it. I promise. All right. So as I work that out, Ed, you have, again, arguably investigated thousands of crime scenes. You processed as a crime scene unit investigator, thousands of scenes. Talk about some of the complications. And I know we touched on it last night in the home in Massapequa Park. He's been labeled as a hoarder, but the police commissioner said it a little bit nicer. He said he was a pack rat, right? But Rex Heuermann, a hoarder, lots of clutter inside the house. Talk about some of the hurdles that you have to go through to collect evidence here.
Well, first of all, you got to come up with a game plan. This is not some willy-nilly operation. First, you have to do your crime scene walkthrough of this particular house. Now, it's first floor, basement, backyard, front yard, all the yards, so forth. And then once you've done that walkthrough, then you'll come up with your game plan on how you're going to process scene, what search methods you're going to use, how many people you're going to need, what type of potential evidence is going to be there. Now, as you said, that basement was like a hoarder's paradise. So there are safety issues involved in that. So you have to slowly and methodically pull everything out to an area where you'll have room to safely and securely, and most importantly, areas that you won't be able to cross-contaminate all the various items that are down there, and then get an idea of what you're looking at in there and what's in there, how it relates to the case, if there's any probative value, what types of processing needs to occur. Now, mind you, all of this has to be photographed. All of this has to be sketched. If they have 3D laser scanners, great. But as you slowly dig through this mess of hoarding, it's like I said, it's like an anthropological dig or an archaeological dig. As you slowly remove layers, you have to rescan and rephoto to show, your progress as you're removing these items from top. Because it looked like that basement was packed with stuff from the ceiling to the floor.
Yeah, we looked at it last night. It was a nightmare. And, my wife and I took a ride out, not to be gawkers or anything. We just took a ride in my vehicle, and we recorded a little bit. And I did a live stream from the neighborhood there. And it's just total chaos with the residents of that community. And that community has been turned upside down, with people coming in to look, and with their own people coming in from across town. But they're happy. There's a sense of relief because now they have what they feel is the perpetrator who's responsible for these 4 murders. There's, the 7 or 8 others that need still to be investigated and further, and closure for their families. But I did get it to play. Tracy, you saw me pump my fist. I was like, I'm not giving up on this. But this is some of the things when you don't have a control room. I'm the control room. So, all right, here's the, oh my God. I had it up on the screen and now it left. My goodness. All right, we're going to try it one more time. Ed,
so while he's trying to do it, you got it?
Go ahead. Yeah.
While he's trying to do it, Tracy, why don't you tell the audience about, I'm a local law enforcement officer or chief of the department, and I'm going to ask the FBI to assist me in a case like this, what the FBI can bring to the table.
Sure, several different things. And it also depends on the time. I think FBI obviously has grown technologically a lot, really in the past 10 years. And one of the biggest things that I personally feel that they bring to the table, at least now, quite frankly, is digital. Really, in terms of cell phone processing, CAST, in my opinion, has been a huge game changer. We actually were able to arrest someone at their place of work because we pinpointed the exact location of their phone, which we never could do before. And they can do it quickly, efficiently, and they have entire teams that are dedicated to doing that. And so I think that's one of the huge things that they can bring to the table. Another thing that you talked about, Ed, is actually their evidence response team. Now, local and state police departments all have excellent, actually, evidence response teams, but the FBI, especially in a case like this, where you are dealing with a pack rat, and you want to move through all of that quickly and obviously effectively, that is something just in terms of additional hands they can bring in. Also, in terms of biological forensics, DNA, those kinds of things, the FBI has access to more funds. I know federal funding has been freed up to some of the local and state law enforcement departments to process DNA evidence. However, really, the FBI receives a great deal of funding to be able to do it and to be able to do it. And the turnaround is a lot quicker a lot of times than some of the departments on a local level.
Yeah. So you talked about those 2 things. And again, let's go back to profiling. We had the behavioral science unit out of Quantico. And if we can get those folks involved, those good folks involved, and get them case information, they can come up with a potential profile of our suspect, which apparently there has been a profile done that was really close. I think it was Jim Clemente, right? Who did the profile, if I'm not mistaken. And he pretty much nailed it.
Ed, you're never mistaken. You're correct. That was him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. So this is my 3rd strike. I tried it 3 times and it keeps coming up and it goes away. But I do want people to see this, so I'm not going to give up. If it doesn't come up this time, I'm just going to knock my head against the wall. So there it goes. All right.
Hey, do you want me to get on the phone and call T.W. Chan back again?
I blame Tracy for all this, but I take it back, Tracy, because I'm only kidding. This is on me. Maybe my internet's a little wonky because we did have quite a bit of storms here, but it looks like I've got good internet because I'm plugged in. But who knows? All right, let's take a listen to this, and we'll be right back.
The Gilgo Beach murders, a crime that captivated and terrified Long Islanders for more than a decade. 10 victims, devastated families, and so many questions. Who was responsible? Was there more than one killer? Would the murderer ever be caught?
Rex, did you do it?
Suddenly, an arrest. 59-year-old Massapequa Park architect Rex Heuermann was charged with 3 of the killings: Amber Costello, Melissa Barthelemy, and Megan Waterman. Their remains were found in a wooded area along Gilgo Beach in December 2010. He's also considered to be a strong suspect in the case of Maureen Brainard Barnes. All of the women worked as sex workers. Neighbors in his Massapequa Park community are stunned. Heuermann grew up in the home he still lives in here on First Avenue.
Shocking. They can't be anything else but shocking.
Newsday investigative reporter Sandra Petty explains what prompted law enforcement to make an arrest after 13 years. My understanding is the big break in the case actually came March of last year.
That's absolutely right. That's when they linked a Chevrolet Avalanche to Rex Heuermann. And they also put him in the same areas that had been pinpointed by cell phone records. And he matched the physical description that a witness had given at the beginning of the investigation in 2010.
And that same description also was similar to the FBI profile that had already been out there, right?
Absolutely.
What we now know, according to investigators, is Heuermann was the center of an intense 14-month investigation during which he allegedly used 7 different burner phones and did more than 200 searches about the Gilgo Beach investigation, even checking out the website created by police to gather information and tips. Investigators used DNA from hair samples found on the victims and a pizza box tossed in the trash to help connect the dots.
This was an investigation that was built piece by painstaking piece. They literally had to start from scratch and go through every piece of evidence and look at it again with fresh eyes.
Suffolk District Attorney Ray Tierney credits this arrest to the tireless work of the task force, made up of Suffolk and State Police, the DA's office, the sheriff, and the FBI.
That's what working on cold cases is. You take all of these disparate pieces and you look for relationships, you look for connections. So that's what we did, and that's why you need that collaboration.
There are still 6 other victims tied to Gilgo Beach, and DA Tierney says no one is stopping now.
It's not over. I mean, it's not over by a long shot. So this is the first step.
So there you have it. Tracy, I wanted to go to you just quickly because, you know, some of the questions I told you I have 3 pages of them coming in from the audience. And thank you to this community, Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. You guys are second to none. But one of the repetitive questions that was asked in this thing is that, you know, FBI agents and FBI executives, you don't hear them talking the way you see the Suffolk County District Attorney going on Good Morning America, Fox 5, News Nation. Once you go on with them, they keep calling you. But, you know, you have the police commissioner, you have the jail, the sheriff out in jail because jail records, all their intel, they helped in this task force. You had the state superintendent of police going on television and giving interviews. Talk about why the FBI always zips it.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, it's not a federal case, right? You know, this isn't a federal case. And obviously, if you look even at, I hate to bring this up, but, you know, Brian Koberger as well, the FBI backed out. They helped, and then they sort of backed off, and you don't hear from them again. And that's what we do. That's the same as CIA, right? A lot of times we're known for our failures and not for our successes. And particularly in a case like this, where this is a state case, and as I mentioned before, the FBI is being invited, right? They are invited guests. They aren't the predominant law enforcement agency that's investigating this case. They're, again, very careful in how they are perceived, and they don't want to be perceived as someone that came in, took over the case, and took all of the credit, because I think that reputation is really important moving forward with other local law enforcement entities wanting to bridge those gaps and create these positive relationships with them so that they will be invited again in the future. And the reality is, a lot of times as an FBI agent, as a CIA officer, you really can't reveal sources and methods and those types of things. And that's why we keep our mouths shut most of the time.
You know, and Ed, you heard the police commissioner say that we kept this thing close to the vest. They impaneled the secret grand jury, like we heard in Koberger. And since Tracy brought it up, I'll bring it up again. There's some parallels in how this case went down. That secret grand jury that they impaneled gives them the authority and the power to interview witnesses, get subpoenas and search warrants and so forth in secrecy. And it's not to be secretive, to be corrupt. It's to be secretive, to not tip off their one person that they were looking for. And they made mention of this at the press conference. That was one of the things that I homed in on, is like, we are dealing with a party of one. And we did not want that person to know what we were up to. So these things are important. And some of the folks who are not involved in investigations like this, Ed and I spent, over 2 decades investigating various different cases. And Tracy has done her fair share. on not only the national level, the international level. A lot of her stuff was done over in Afghanistan. So my point is that people who look at this from the outside in think, or from the outside in, they think, well, this is sneaky. This is not right. We saw those comments in the Kohlberger case, like everybody was going crazy on Twitter. Oh, that was a sneaky thing to do. No, it was the right thing to do in the name of justice. So
it's so frustrating because I deal with that a lot, particularly being ex-CIA and ex-FBI. And, I talk a lot about the right to, people's access to every and all bits of information. And the reality is that information is kept secret mostly to benefit the public, which in this case, it does benefit the public in that we have an alleged serial killer potentially off the streets. And it's not to circumvent the system or anything like that. This is something that the FBI and CIA have done for decades, if not half of a century. And it's not to fool the American people, but I think sometimes people feel that way because that's the way in which the secrecy sort of comes across. And it's very frustrating to have to deal with that.
Oh,
no, absolutely. Because if you look at the whether we're arresting somebody or we're prosecuting somebody, like on the local level, the cases are always labeled people of the state of New York versus. On a federal level, it's the United States of America versus. It's being done in our name, these prosecutions, these arrests, because the primary function of our government is to keep our citizens safe.
Yeah. I wanted to also bring up a couple of things because these are sticking points. I've got my notes here. The 200 plus guns. Initially in the first press conference, there was talk about 92 actual permits. Now, I don't know if that meant this was coming from the district attorney. I don't know if those 92 permits meant for handguns, because most of the times, Ed, you and I know here in New York State, to have a handgun, you need a permit, right? So
right.
If
that gun is automatically registered once you have the permit.
Right. So
you can't purchase the gun in New York State, a handgun. You can't purchase a handgun without first having obtained the license.
Right. So it right away led me to, as an investigator, that he had 92 handguns, right? Because the rifles and so forth for hunting, you don't require a permit for it. You might need a hunting permit and so forth.
Right.
That's the extent of it. But we saw them bringing out long rifles. And I have a piece from the news today. It's only 2 minutes. Promise this will play, because I tested it. It's two minutes. I want to talk about that. And I also want to talk about the component of, and this is coming from user generated questions, why isn't the ATF involved in this thing? But we'll answer that question when we come back. Are you kidding me? Every time I do this, it works. But
so the ATF will be looking at the guns that are of dubious backgrounds to trace their source of purchase and so forth. Okay, he's got it.
This morning, we are following several new developments in the Gilgo Beach murders. Prosecutors now revealing more than 200 guns have been discovered at suspect Rex Heuermann's Massapequa home. This comes as detectives expand their search now for clues at a second storage facility.
Meantime, authorities are revealing fears they had about the suspect potentially fleeing the country prior to his arrest last week. We're also learning how Heuermann's family reacted to the arrest.
Eyewitness News reporter Derek Waller has the latest for us. He's outside the suspect's home, where still a lot of activity this morning as this investigation continues there in Massapequa Park. Derek, what can you tell us right now?
Mike Sherling, good morning. And as you mentioned, 200 guns found inside that locked vault behind a metal door inside that home. And that home's located down the street, and you can see that they are heavily guarding this street, so no one can go down that street while this investigation continues this morning. And we also are getting new reaction from the Suffolk County Police Commissioner as well. Now, officers were seen cleaning out evidence from the home of Rex Heuermann, as well as a storage unit in Amityville. The 59-year-old charged with the murders of Melissa Barthélemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, who were all found dead at Gilgo Beach in 2010. Now, Heuermann seen here being escorted by officers officers, was arrested last week outside his Midtown architecture firm after they say they linked his DNA to the crimes from pizza crusts he threw away. Cops were planning to arrest him this week, but felt they had to speed things up in case word got out they were close to an arrest, possibly giving their suspect time to get away. Now investigators are combing through evidence, trying to link him to other murders. Here's Suffolk County Police Chief Rodney Harrison.
Some of the searches that we saw that he was doing is alarming. It's very, very concerning. And once again, as I have to make sure that everybody understands that it's a very good thing that we got this animal off the streets.
So, a lot of strong words there. But again, you know, the onus is on these investigators. They have the liability of holding these cases. And if this guy was to go out and, God forbid, commit another murder, it would be on them. So I think not only was it that they were worried he was going to catch on to that they were either 24 hours a day, 7 days a week surveilling this guy. Maybe they felt like they were made. Maybe they felt other things. But I think the primary reason is because of the searches that he was doing and the vile searches that he was doing online and engaging with sex workers. But I want to get back to you, Ed, about the gun question.
Okay.
Question coming in from our audience. Would the ATF be involved with this many guns?
Well, not per se for the amount of guns, but again, in New York State, not New York City, in New York State, all you need to buy a rifle or a shotgun is your driver's license, and you need to pass the background NICS check. Okay. And then if you pass all that and you pay your fee and you get the gun, outside of New York City, you don't have to register it or anything. But if you want to go hunting, you need a license for that. Okay. So that's for the long guns. For the handguns, before you can purchase them, you have to go and apply for a permit. Now, outside of New York City, because New York City had a permitting scheme that was totally different than the rest of the state, but it's different now since the Supreme Court had a ruling in Bruin versus Bruin case rather. That's all changed. But that said, you get your permit, then you can go purchase your gun, and then that gun gets registered on your license. That's your handguns. Right. So if they're talking about registered guns, I would suppose they are handguns, and they would know about those because he would have to report. He wouldn't be able to purchase them without first getting permission from the permitting authority, in this case, Suffolk County, where he lives. Now, the rifles, well, I mean, again, with just his driver's license, he can get them. And maybe some of these rifles and shotguns were his father's. And when the father passed away, or whatever the case may be, he took possession of them.
Let's go with Tracy, since she's the Fed. She's the Fed side of this. First of all, people are asking, what does ATF stand for?
Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Thank you. That's from one of our key supporters. Somebody from Australia was like, what is this ATF acronym?
That makes that's a good question.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know.
Yeah. So again, as Ed explained, I don't think that the ATF would come in on a case like this, but it was a good question. And
no, but they can if Suffolk County can't figure out where the guns came from, and they may need the ATF's help in tracing the gun.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't know. They were bringing out those long guns, and some of them, I didn't get a good look at all of them because it was just a small little snippet, small little news piece. But it looked like they were coming out with quite a few different, different types of long guns. And they said that he's a hunter, and a lot of my friends who are hunters have numerous weapons. I'm sitting here talking to you guys, drinking out of a Smith & Wesson coffee mug. So,
hey, but guess what else?
Look, I live in Texas, so it's game on here.
Yeah, with every fill up of your car, you get a box of ammunition. Okay, with these rifles and handguns, guess what Suffolk County has to do? They got to test fire them. They got to get that bullet. They got to get that cartridge case and put it into the system. They have to check it against.
That's going to take a long time.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's why you might want to ask the help of the feds. Because they have the pocketbook and they have the equipment and the manpower. right? So because you're going to put the shell casings, the cartridge casings into IBIS, the Integrated Ballistics Identification System, and see if there's any crimes associated with any of this ballistics. Okay,
Right.
and that all has to be done.
I also wanted to, if it's okay if I jump in really quickly, something I wanted to talk about, and I totally agree with you, Ed. I think putting all of that into IBIS and the cataloging that's going to take place, it would make sense for them to pass that off. I don't want to say pass that off, that's wrong, but to utilize ATF, you know, in terms of doing that in terms of manpower. But and again, and I think you guys know I'm not one to speculate at all, but I do think just in looking at his search history, and I know I'm going on a tangent here, but in looking at some of those things that he was searching, part of me wonders if he was actively looking at and searching for child pornography and children being injured and tortured. And I'm guessing the authorities couldn't allow that to continue, which is also why an arrest was probably imminent.
Yeah, there's several things that leads me in that direction for the arrest. One, the searches. Two, the new recent purchase of a new burner phone. Okay, still in contact with the sex trade workers on the internet, because they're monitoring his internet activity, his cell phone activity, real time because of the warrants they have obtained. All right, so as he's texting people or conversing with people, they're reading it.
Right.
They know
Or
exactly
listening to
what
it, depending on how they were.
Yeah, if they had a wire, yeah, sure.
We have the redacted and an unredacted version of his searches. We listed them last night, and Tracy, yes, he was searching for some vile stuff. And again, that was a very good point that you brought up. That could be added onto the pile of liability with this case. You know, you cannot allow somebody that is trying to actively engage in with sex workers and also searching for this snuff porn and the kiddie porn and all of the things that he was doing. Just a vile human being. And the police commissioner, you don't usually hear this type of stuff, calling them demons and so forth. You don't hear that often, but you know, Rodney Harrison, a seasoned NYPD executive who became police commissioner. I wanted to ask you quickly, in 2020, the police commissioner in Suffolk County, former FBI Geraldine Hart, I believe her name was, she took over the case, and that was when we saw the belt buckle, right? So 10 years after these remains were all recovered in 2010, in 2020, she comes into Suffolk County as the police commissioner, and she opens up this case, and she opens up the website on the Gilgo 4, which we now come to know that Rex Heuermann was going on and actively searching through, according to the bail application. I think it was important that a former FBI executive came into the Suffolk County Police Department, and that's what I felt gave this a jump start and a new, fresh look. Any thoughts on her coming in?
I absolutely think, can you all hear me okay? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, great.
So maybe she,
I absolutely think bringing her in was a great idea, in that you are loosening that battle of ego, I guess, that we were sort of talking about. That was, in my opinion, what was ultimately hindering this case. Bringing someone in who understands that the FBI isn't here to take this away from you, which I always felt was, for lack of a better word, sort of gross, but they're territorial about these things and these investigations. But really, being so territorial actually hinders justice for victims, quite frankly. And I think bringing her in, I don't want to say it blew it wide open. I don't think that was necessarily the case, but it eased that tension a little bit and allowed for the FBI to come in and bring some of those resources with them to expand this case, how it probably needed to be expanded really from day one.
Yeah, I mean, Ed, I'm sure you agree with that, because, you know, with her contacts, I believe she was the in charge of the Melville office in Long Island. She was the head executive chief in charge of that Melville office, and they were, Suffolk County, Nassau County, go-to office for the FBI. So she had to have tons of contacts, and for her to, come in as the police commissioner, I think that opened up the bridge the gap, so to speak, that was created to be kind of nice about it with the previous administration. Now, Tracy, I know you probably haven't, maybe it's a delay or something's going on, but you're a pro and you are doing it great. You're doing a great job. Sometimes it happens when you use the cell phone, it kind of is a little bit delayed and so forth. And you see that when you have reporters in the field and they're doing uplinks and it's kind of off. But because Tracy's a pro, she's right on it. Ed, any thoughts on Geraldine Hart getting in 2020, and now here we are 3 years later with an arrest?
Well, I'm happy that we're here, and it was a good move, and it broke down some of those barriers that were put up in place by the old school law enforcement out there, and it just moved us forward, so that when the next commissioner came in and the case is still unsolved, a lot of the pieces were already in place, and he just needed to tweak it a little bit to get it where we got today.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to try to play a piece that's from 3 years ago. And it, of course, it works right away. This is when Geraldine Hart, former FBI executive, became police commissioner. And shortly thereafter, she opened up the floodgates on this case and started a new, fresh look, as she said, into this case.
Decade-long hunt for a suspected serial killer on Long Island took a new turn today.
Suffolk County Police revealed a new clue in the so-called Gilgo Beach murders. CBS 2's Carolyn Gussoff live in Yaphank at police headquarters tonight with more. Carolyn.
Good evening. It is Long Island's deepest, darkest mystery. Nearly a dozen murders, none of them solved. Well, today, Suffolk County Police released an image of a piece of evidence that has been under wraps all this time, a belt that may have been worn or used in the murders. It's part of a new push to bring a serial killer to justice.
Today, we are launching a website dedicated to sharing information with the public about these unsolved murders.
11 cold case killings, and now Suffolk Police adding heat to what the commissioner calls the most complex and well-known investigation in Suffolk history. The remains of 11 people found along a desolate stretch of Ocean Parkway. The killer never caught. With GilgoNews.com, they now ask for public tips and shared for the first time this image of half-inch letters on a belt found near the bodies.
A black leather belt embossed with the letters HM or WH was recovered during the initial stages of this investigation. We believe that the belt was handled by the suspect.
There will be new technology as well. The county recently approved to search public genealogy databases to help identify nameless victims. It was the search for missing escort Shannon Gilbert in 2010 that turned up the stunning killing field. The scattered remains of 5 other sex workers, plus 5 unidentified victims, including a man and a toddler. Gilbert's sister, reached by phone, said, "It's about time."
We don't even know what happened to her. So of course, we want it to be solved. We want to know what's going on. We want to get the answers that we're just so desperately seeking.
Attorney.
So there you have it. I just wanted to put that all together. That was from 3 years ago. Obviously, when the police commissioners now have changed. But I thought that was an important turning point in this case. And this is probably when this defendant started kind of crapping his pants a little bit, because he was like, wow. He started doing searches recently. And I'm sure at that time in 2020, he was probably doing searches and saying, ooh, I'm not scot-free anymore. So it's always good to tighten that noose. We're coming up on the 1 hour mark. We're 50 minutes into this thing. I want to go, Tracy, if you don't mind, to our chat, our live chat. I know you probably can't see it because you're on your cellular device. But if it's okay with you, folks, put hashtag Tracy in the chat, hashtag Ed, hashtag DutyRon, and put your questions to us, and we'll try to pick out, 4 or 5 of these questions, and I'll ask them to our guest live. So everybody in the
I
chat.
have to change my earphones real quick. Of course,
Sure,
I've
I'll
got
take
the
you off.
wrong
I'll
pair.
take you off, and I'll bring you right back in.
I'm just going to mute my camera.
Okay. All right. So she's going to be doing that, changing out the phones. Let's take a look. People are saying, wow, time flies. I'm loving this panel. Unsolved crimes uncovered. Talking to some of the folks in the chat.
Ron, some crimes, not crime scene, but some homicide investigation 101. I know we got Phil Grimaldi out here in the chat now. But typically with a homicide investigation, detectives want to speak to the last person that saw the victim alive or was with the victim or spoke to them. They want to track down that individual and interview them and get them on the record. Okay. Right. And apparently they did that in this case initially, where they came up with the escort's driver and the other participant in the scam that was conducted on our defendant. So during that interview, they got a description of the suspect.
Right.
They got the vehicle information, at least a general description of the vehicle. Okay.
Right. This is Amber Costello's boyfriend slash pimp.
Right.
That happened out in Babylon, Long Island, and they got all of this information, as you're saying.
But it seems like they could have done more with it, and they didn't.
They didn't do any cell phone checking of her cell phone records. They didn't do any, like you said, searching and cross-referencing of like what we saw in the Kohlberger case, right? 2015, 2013 to 20, I forgot the date range. What was it? 2010 to 2013. Hyundai Elantra turned out to be a 2015. They could have done that. They could have started.
Yeah, with this truck, they could have narrowed down this truck and did a search of Long Island. How many people own this truck on Long Island or in Suffolk County or whatever the case may be? And then they would get names.
Yeah, absolutely. And
then from the names, then you get your DMV photos from the driver's licenses, and from the name, you get registrations, you get addresses, you get all these different things that it seems like it just didn't happen.
Yeah, and we got confirmation from the former district attorney, Tim Siney. He basically said, nothing was done, or some of the major steps that you need to take were not done. Robin, Ohio, thank you for that question. Do you think Rex knew he was a suspect in these crimes? It would be mere speculation and guessing. I don't know. But if I had to guess at it, maybe towards the end, he might have, because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, they're surveilling this guy. They started it March of 2022. That's 16 months, folks. That's a long time to have police trace, on your tail and not have. I mean, I pay attention. Some people pay attention a lot less, but I pay attention quite a bit. I would definitely know it. And, to follow this guy around and watch his every move, it's a difficult thing to do. I saw a couple of questions for Tracy. So now that she's back with her headphones ready, here we go. Lucy on the go says, Tracy, is it true that Rex tried to insert himself in the case?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and it's a great follow-up actually to what we were talking about before. And I do apologize. Aside from my internet going out, our power also went out, so my earphones lost their charge, but it's back on now. Basically, I believe that him consistently checking the website that the commissioner had originally put up in 2020. Also, keeping in touch with the victims' families. Keeping in touch makes it seem nice, but basically his own form of surveillance across the victims' families, taunting them, if you will, I believe is his way of checking up on himself and checking up on the investigation to see if they were either on to them and to see which kind of tells me that he was inserting himself in a way to ensure that he was, I guess, quote, safe from being investigated.
Excellent. Yeah. There's a whole slew of questions coming in. Thank you, Tracy, for answering that. Here comes mail from Gina, who's a subscriber and a contributor to this channel. Tracy, are there any foreseeable possibilities of federal crimes in this case?
So speculation, I guess. It depends. I know that they're looking at that timeshare in the Las Vegas area. I am assuming that anywhere, that he had contacts, South Carolina, where the vehicle was, I am assuming that they will go back through some of the unsolved cases and see if he had connections to those. If that is the case, then yes, we are clearly looking at federal charges here, as this is something that would be crossing state lines, and then the FBI would have to get involved in a situation like this. But in my opinion, that's absolutely going to take time, and that's why they're going to focus on this first.
Now, if I can jump in here, because he seemed like a kind of cash and carry kind of guy, if you know what I mean. But if he was doing any type of wire transfers or paying through the, paying for services via the internet or Venmo or whatever the services, because a lot of these young ladies were Craigslist. All right. So if he did any of those payments like that, could not the feds kind of?
Well, of course. I mean, yes, of course. But I think what they're trying to do in this case is really, what is the most significant thing that's going to put him behind bars forever?
The murder.
Right. And the reality is these homicides. Certainly if he's using Venmo, PayPal, Kick, whatever app he's using, right, to go on Craigslist, to look at child porn, all of those things. But, if you're found guilty of one count of child porn, you're looking at anywhere from 13 to 20 years, right? Personally, I would like to see him charged to the max and to go away for life. I would like him to have LWOP, right? And I think that's what everyone wants. And the reality is you pursuing those charges, in my opinion, isn't going to get him that. Although it sounds terrible to say that, I think that's what it boils down to sometimes.
You know what comes to mind? Al Capone, right?
Yes, exactly.
All the homicides this guy committed, all the bootlegging and everything. What did they get him on?
Right.
Tax evasion.
Yeah.
Taxes.
Okay.
Taxes.
So Loaded Hot puts in a comment, and it's a valid comment. He was buying the burner phones with his credit card, and I read that in the affidavit, 32 pages. He was making purchases for additional minutes and creating spoof email accounts and so forth. And when he would go into these branded stores, he wasn't going into the typical small little XYZ cell store. He was going into branded like T-Mobile stores and getting phones, burner phones, and adding minutes, but he was using his American Express card. So that was part of some of the things that did him in. Tracy, if you're kind of lagging, you could go out and come back in. That might help, but I don't want to throw you off a little bit because that does happen sometimes.
I got you. I've got you now. Okay. I reset it.
Yeah.
Great. So a couple more questions because I want to try to wrap this up. I appreciate Tracy being patient. I promised her about an hour. We got 3 more minutes. So tax evasion, people are sending stuff in the chat. Here's one from Lexi. It's just complimentary. DutyRon, Ed Wallace, and Tracy Walder. Thank you for a great stream tonight. Well, we appreciate you. This true crime community, and Tracy will back me up on this. We go onto social media. We try to deliver and give information from the perspectives of the federal, state, local, and our trades that we stay. What I'm trying to say is we try to stay within our lanes. I'm not going to give you opinions from an attorney's perspective. That's why I grab attorneys and have them come on. Ed and I bring on forensic anthropologists. We bring on, all the different DNA experts. We had Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick. She's like the CeCe Moore equivalent, but she's like old school. She's got a ton of knowledge when it comes to this stuff. And we had her sit down and talk with us about Kohlberger. And if you haven't watched that stream, I'll link it here in the description. We try to reach out. Ed's got a Rolodex that's a mile long. It's not one that just keeps rolling. It just drops to the ground. It's just unlimited amount of experts. So Ed, I thank you for that, for bringing on your experts and people that you had relationships with while on the job and off. Barbara Butcher, she's a retired New York City medical examiner, chief of staff. She's on with us all the time. She just had a book put out there, What the Dead Know, I'll link that in the description, and I'm also going to link all of Tracy's social media and all of the stuff where you can go and find her. She's on Instagram. Do you go up on? Do you delve into the Twitter sphere like Jennifer does, or do you not in on Twitter?
Oh, I'm definitely on Twitter.
All right, so I'll link all of that stuff. We'll link to Twitter. So I think we covered all the questions. I mean, we might have missed some, but there was a ton of them come flying in.
I just put one up before and you took it down. Can I answer that one real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
About the hair and fiber. No, remember the Lacard's exchange principle. All right. The question was about the wife's hair being on one of the victims, and does that mean that the victim was at the house, out his house? No, it's a trace transfer evidence. He could have had that hair on him from his wife, and then he transferred it to the victim when during the commission of the crime, or the cover up of the crime, or the disposal of the body.
Thank you, Ed. Sorry about that. I try to I don't like to leave things up on the screen there, so that's why I got rid of it. Not that I did it on purpose; I just did it. Princess Michelle says, "Great guests tonight." Yeah, Tracy. Listen, she's a frequent contributor on News Nation. You can see her on there all the time. I know some people were complaining that News Nation is no longer on certain. I don't know, certain where you go to watch it. I don't remember what it was, but I know I have it on my Cablevision Long Island. So all I have to do is just log into my online account. If you have a YouTube account or YouTube TV, you can see it through there. And they also give you like 4-minute previews or free watches. So if you want to see some of their stuff, you could go on and do that. And I also watch it on I believe on my Fire Stick at the office. So I'm always catching up with stuff. Tracy, I just want to go to you for final words in regards to this Gilgo Beach 4, and just some of your thoughts going forward of what we're going to see.
You know, first of all, I'm glad they caught him. I do think what we are going to see are more murders that he has committed. I don't think that it's just this 4. Like I said, I don't speculate, but I think that that's just putting these puzzle pieces together. It's what makes the most sense, quite frankly. And I do think he will be charged with more. I think this is what they could get him on the quickest, quite frankly. And I think they're going to be sorting through all of that evidence as a way to connect to.
I 100% concur. I think they grabbed him now with what they had for fear that he was going to do more.
Absolutely. And then Tracy's frozen, but she probably could still hear us. Yeah,
Sorry.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, it's fine. I agree wholeheartedly with that, Tracy. And we were asked that last night when we were live. This is not his first go around. These 4, he's not yet charged with the 4th, but it's definitely not his first go around. And you know, I don't think that he just took a 13-year hiatus from this.
No.
So we always like to say this: we'll let the evidence lead us to additional crimes. So if there are additional recoveries or additional forensic information via, you know, computers, cell phones, technology, it will lead us. You know, they always say it's like walking down a hallway. You open up one door and then another one opens up. So after, you know, investigations and interviews and so forth, it leads to other places. And we never know what's going to happen here. There's properties now. They're talking about 6, 7 different properties. Whatever the case may be, this case will unfold before us, and we'll see this stuff on a daily and a weekly basis. I live locally to Massapequa Park. I plan to take a trip out to not only Massapequa Park, but also to Gilgo, and do a walk through on the north side, on the bay side, where these bodies were recovered. And I plan to take a walk I'm gonna bring one of my friends with me to play cameraman, and we're gonna walk it. And I just give you guys a sense of the brush and how dense it is. Now, the landscape has changed. You were able to pull a car off to the side of the road, and now there is a barrier, and there's I would say about a 15-foot walkway / rollerblading, bicycle riding. So it is paved, but there is still that dense brush because I walked it 2 years ago, and I'll link that in the description. This is when I first started out on YouTube, and my wife came with me, and she was like, "This is creepy, and I want to go home." So I had to wrap it up, and it was just a quick little thing. And I let her sit in the car, and I did the walk myself. But I have to tell you that at nighttime, it is pitch black. You can't even see in front of your face. So that's how, perfect of a situation if you wanted to do something as it's alleged that he did. Tracy, I want to thank you on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon, Ed Wallace, and this entire community here. I hope that you enjoyed. I know there's some snafus on my side, and on yours with the internet. But would you come back and visit
No
us?
need to apologize.
No need to apologize.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so sorry about the unprofessional nature of this. I'm horrified, but thank you so much for having me.
Please.
You shouldn't be. You're a trooper.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be happy to come back. It was an honor to be on. Thank you so much.
It was an honor having you.
Yes. So, Tracy Walder, thank you so much for being here. Ed and I are going to close out the show. We're going to just wish you a good night, and
thank you.
We'll see you again soon. Thanks, Tracy.
Bye.
Stay safe in Texas.
Yeah, she does. Yeah. So, Ed, I thought that was a great perspective coming from a former CIA and FBI agent. We're going to get her back when she has good internet, and then we'll do this again in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, Ed, I want to thank you as well for coming on 2 days in a row and being available. And I know, you got a lot of things going on. You're doing a lot of stuff around the house. You got your business that you're running, and you dedicate yourself to Crime Time with DutyRon and the community here, and everybody loves and appreciates you. So, Ed, thank you for your expertise and for, more importantly, being a friend.
My pleasure, and I'm happy that Tim Acosta put us together, and we've been together now, almost 2 years now?
Yeah, about 2 years. I mean, I didn't keep track of the exact time, but if I go back and look at the video that we did on Christine
down in Florida.
Yeah. So that was actually, I know it was March of it was St. Patrick's Day of 2021. So there you have it. That was the first video we did. But yeah, it's great. And thank you again. We're going to send a message to the cop team. But before we do it, the outro, I want to say thank you to the replay viewers. Thank you to the mod squad. Thank you to the people who left comments in the comment section. Also in the live chatters. You guys are freaking great. Thank you so much for being here. Good night from New York. And the next live is going to be Thursday night. We're going to have Tiffany Leonard, the cell and computer expert. She's going to come on with us on Thursday night, 9 o'clock. We're going to talk about the cell phone stuff. So this continues. We're going to take a day off, and we're going to come back on Thursday. Ed, if you're available, you're always welcome.
I'm available.
We'll see you Thursday night. All right, guys. Good night from New York and an undisclosed location.
Yeah. Be safe. Be prepared. Watch your six.
Strength, prayers, and positive vibes to not only these victims, but all victims that are out there and that are yet to get justice. So thank you guys all for joining, and good night. Peace.